I wasn't supposed to be looking at her like that. And yet, I was already forgetting the one rule she gave me the moment I stepped into her house. I just turned 23, hauling a duffel bag and a second-hand fan into the only available room I could afford after my last lease fell apart. Everything in the city was overpriced or halfway condemned. Her listing was both rare and urgent. Furnished, private entrance. No references required. Just cash up front and, as she said with a raised eyebrow, no drama. Her name was Maya. She looked like someone who didn't want to be noticed. Loose jeans, loose hair, no makeup, but everything about her pulled the air out of the room. She had the kind of presence that made you sit up straighter without realizing it. Late 40s, maybe. Divorced, probably. Definitely used to handling things herself. I saw it in the way she wiped her hands on her jeans after fixing a cabinet hinge, and the way she checked the water heater herself when I asked if it was leaking. The place was quiet. Too quiet. No sound but the creak of floorboards and the faint click of her nails against her coffee mug. She showed me the room like she was reciting lines she'd used before. Closets small but deep. Window sticks in summer. Rent's due on the 1st, not the 3rd. And then came the rule. At the doorway, she turned and said, "Look, before you move your stuff in, there's just one thing I'm serious about." I nodded. "Yeah, sure. What is it?" She looked at me for a beat too long, like she was measuring something. "Don't try to be my friend," she said. "I mean it. I rent the room. That's it." I tried to laugh it off. "That's fair. I'm quiet anyway." "Good," she said. But she didn't smile. It was supposed to be simple. 3 weeks passed like fog. The quiet kind of tension that builds when two people pretend not to notice each other in tight spaces. She kept to herself. I did too. But I noticed things, her hair wet from a late-night shower, the smell of her lotion on the stairs, the way she hummed softly to herself when she cooked, like she forgot someone else lived there now. One night, a storm knocked out the power. The house felt darker than it should have. I fumbled for candles and ended up in the kitchen just as she walked in, holding a flashlight. "Jesus," she gasped, catching her breath. "You scared me." "Sorry," I muttered, trying not to look at the way her shirt clung to her collarbone. She lit a candle on the table between us. The shadows danced across her face. "I hate storms," she said, sitting down slowly. "Always have. They make everything feel off." There was silence. Not uncomfortable, just heavy. I sat across from her. "I kinda like them." She raised an eyebrow. "Of course you do. You're young. Everything still feels like a movie." I laughed. "And you? You're not that old." She didn't laugh. Just looked at me for a second. Really looked like she was about to say something honest. But instead, she stood up and said, "Don't stay up too late." As she passed me, her hand brushed my shoulder. She didn't pull away immediately. Neither did I. And that was the moment I knew I had already broken the rule. I kept telling myself it didn't mean anything. That moment, her hand on my shoulder, it was probably just nothing. Static in the dark. A storm making everyone feel weird. I told myself that on a loop, over and over, even as I kept replaying it anyway. She didn't mention it the next day. In fact, she barely looked at me. But something had changed. She called me down 2 days later, said the curtain rod in her bedroom had come loose, and she couldn't reach it. I said sure, no problem. But the moment I stepped into her room, I knew I shouldn't be there. It smelled like her. Soft, warm, real. A book was flipped upside down on her nightstand, glasses next to it. Her bed was messy, not careless, just lived in. And somehow that made it feel more intimate than if it had been perfectly made. "You okay getting up there?" she asked, handing me the step stool. "Yeah. I mean, unless this thing collapses and I die." She smirked faintly. "Don't sue me. I don't have anything worth taking." I climbed up, focused on the bracket. But I could feel her behind me, just standing there, arms crossed, quiet. "You live alone long enough," she said suddenly. "You start to pretend everything's not falling apart." I glanced over my shoulder. The curtain rod? Her smile didn't reach her eyes. "Everything," She rarely said things like that. Maya kept her guard up, like vulnerability cost her something she couldn't afford to lose. I tightened the screw, trying not to push. But something in me kept reaching toward her anyway. "Did you ever live with someone?" I asked quietly. She looked down at her bare feet. "Yeah, once. He left when I got sick. I got better. He didn't come back." The air in the room shifted. Not dramatic, just slower. "I'm sorry," I said, and meant it. She nodded once, then looked away like she regretted saying anything at all. When I stepped down, she reached instinctively to steady me, her hand wrapping lightly around my wrist. We both froze. Neither of us let go. Her fingers lingered, just enough to notice, just enough to feel my pulse skip beneath her thumb. "You're good at fixing things," she said, finally letting go. "That's rare." I shrugged. "Guess I like making things feel steady." She turned then, walked to the window, opened it just slightly. The breeze moved through the room like an exhale. "You can stay a bit if you want," she said, not looking at me. "I'm making tea." It wasn't a big invitation. Not on the surface. But my chest felt too full, my skin too alert. I followed her to the kitchen, heart in my throat. I almost said something stupid, something honest, but I bit it back. Instead, I just watched her from the doorway as she poured water into the kettle, her back to me, completely unaware that I was memorizing the curve of her spine. She poured 2 mugs of tea like it was the most natural thing in the world. Like I hadn't just memorized the shape of her bare shoulder through that worn cotton sleeve. We sat across from each other at the small kitchen table. No music, no distractions, just the sound of the wind outside and the whistle of the kettle cooling behind us. She stirred her tea slowly, then again, like she was trying to find something in the swirl of it. "You ever feel," she said quietly, "like you're supposed to want something else?" I looked up, caught her watching me. "What do you mean?" I asked. She hesitated, then shook her head like she was already taking it back. "Forget it. That's a weird thing to say." "No, it's not," I said, leaning forward. "It's just something most people are too scared to admit." She held my gaze for a second longer than she should have. And that's when her phone rang. A shrill, uninvited interruption. She flinched, reached for it reluctantly. Her voice shifted when she answered. Lighter, forced. "Hey, yeah, no, just at home." A pause. Her eyes flicked toward me. "He's just a tenant." "No, I told you I'm not." Another pause, then a sharper tone. "I don't need you checking up on me. Okay?" She ended the call quickly, pressed the phone face down on the table like it had embarrassed her. "Everything okay?" I asked, careful. She didn't answer right away, just stared at the phone like it had stolen something from her. "My sister," she said eventually. "She thinks I'm fragile." "Are you?" She looked up and smiled, but not like she meant it. "Not the way she thinks." Something in me cracked at that. I wanted to reach across the table. I didn't, but I think she saw it anyway, the way my fingers curled into fists, then relaxed again. "I should go," I said, half standing. "Wait," she said too quickly. I froze. She bit her lip. "I didn't mean for that to sound weird. It's nice. Having someone here who doesn't want anything from me." I swallowed. Hard. Except I did want something. Something I wasn't supposed to. Something I couldn't name without breaking whatever fragile boundary still existed between us. "I should still go," I said, softer this time. She stood too. But instead of stepping back, she moved closer. Her hand brushed mine as I reached for my mug. Neither of us pulled away. "You didn't break anything," she said, voice low. I wanted to believe that. But then she looked up at me, and her eyes weren't guarded anymore. They were wide open. And that look said everything we weren't allowed to say. For 3 days we avoided being alone. Not on purpose. Not directly. But something unspoken hung in the air. Something that made every shared space feel like it might catch fire if we weren't careful. I heard her footsteps above me. Her voice on the phone. The quiet clink of her spoon against her teacup. All of it made me feel like I was living under the weight of a secret we hadn't said out loud yet, but couldn't stop thinking about. Then, one night, I came home to find her standing in the kitchen in the dark. Again. No storm this time. Just her, barefoot, staring out the window with her arms folded across her chest. "Maya," I asked gently. She turned, surprised. "Didn't hear you come in." There were no lights on, just the glow from the street lamps outside, painting the side of her face in soft gold. "Why re you standing in the dark?" I asked. She didn't answer right away. Then, "Some things are easier to feel when you can't see everything." I stepped closer. "Like what?" She hesitated, then turned toward me fully. "Like loneliness. Like guilt." That caught me off guard. "You feel guilty?" I asked. She let out a breath that sounded tired. "I told you not to try to be my friend. And now I can't stop noticing when you're not in the room." She'd never said anything like that before. Not even close. I thought I was the only one who... I trailed off, not trusting my mouth to finish. "You're not," she said softly. And suddenly it was all too close. Too intimate. Too honest. I wanted to touch her. But not the way I'd thought I would when I first moved in. Not some fantasy or impulse. I wanted to touch her because I could see, finally, how tired she was of pretending she didn't need to be touched. "You make me forget how old I am," she whispered. "You make me forget I don't belong here," I said. The silence that followed was heavy enough to tilt the room. Then she stepped forward, just one step, and looked up at me with something raw in her eyes. Not invitation, not seduction, just need. "You should go back to your room," she said, barely above a whisper. I know, but I didn't move. Neither did she. And then she asked the question that split the air like lightning. "If I break the rule, will you still see me the same tomorrow?" I didn't answer. Couldn't. I just stared at her. Pulse racing, mouth dry, breath shallow, and waited for her to close the distance neither of us was supposed to want. She didn't move. Neither did I. We just stood there, two people on the edge of something irreversible, breathing the same charged air. But then, the silence broke. A knock at the door. Sharp. Repeated. She blinked, like waking from a dream. "Stay here," she said quickly, already crossing the room. I stood frozen, heart thudding, watching her silhouette move to the door. When she opened it, her whole body shifted. A posture I hadn't seen before. Guarded. Smaller. "Hi," a woman said on the other side. "Sorry to just show up, but you weren't answering." Maya didn't say anything. The woman stepped halfway into the light. Early 30s. Confident. Smiling too brightly. "I just needed to grab my keys," she said. "Left them when I..." Then she spotted me. "Oh," she said, blinking. "Is this your tenant?" Maya didn't answer right away. She nodded once, carefully. "Yeah, he just got in." There was a pause. The woman gave me a once-over that lingered. Then she looked back at Maya and said, lightly, but too pointedly, "You have a type." The air shifted. Maya's eyes hardened just slightly. "You should go." "I'm going," the woman said, too sweet. "Nice meeting you." And then she was gone. Maya closed the door and leaned against it with a soft thud. I watched her for a long beat before saying, "She wasn't your sister, was she?" Maya shook her head. "No, ex?" I asked. She nodded. "Sort of." That landed heavier than I expected. "She was someone I let in," Maya said, "when I shouldn't have. Someone who liked the idea of me more than me." I stepped closer, careful. "You think I'm the same?" She looked up at me, something flickering behind her eyes. "I think you're young. I think I confuse you. I think you want something that might not survive the morning light." I swallowed. "You're wrong." She laughed softly. "Am I?" I reached for her hand, and this time, she didn't pull away. "You think I haven't thought this through," I said. "But I've thought of nothing else. I walk lighter because of you. I notice the days now. The seconds." She looked stunned. Not because I said it, but maybe because she'd wanted to believe it. Then her voice came quiet. "I almost rented this room to someone else, you know? Why didn't you?" Because when you showed up at the door with your stupid broken fan and your wide eyes, I felt something shift. And it scared me. She exhaled, like letting go of something she'd held for too long. But I still picked you, she added. The room was quiet. Then I asked carefully, so what if we both already broke the rule? She didn't smile. She just stepped closer and whispered, then maybe it's time we stop pretending we didn't. We stood in the quiet after her whisper. Then maybe it's time we stop pretending we didn't. No movement, just the soft hum of the fridge and the sound of her breath matching mine. I should have kissed her then. I think she expected me to. But I didn't. Instead, I stepped back. Because something in me knew, if this was going to happen, it couldn't start with impulse. Maya, I said, voice unsteady. If this is just about being lonely, her expression cracked. Don't, she said, almost begging. Don't reduce it to that. I nodded. Okay, then tell me what it is. Because I need to hear you say it. Her eyes welled up, not with tears, but with pressure. The kind that comes after holding yourself too tightly for too long. She looked away. You make me feel awake again, and I hate it, because I spent years trying to go numb. It was easier, cleaner. I took a slow step toward her. And now, she met my eyes raw, stripped of all her usual armor. Now I look forward to footsteps on the stairs. I listen for your laugh through the wall. I worry if you come home late. I care more than I meant to. Her voice cracked then, just slightly, and that was all I needed. I closed the distance, took her hand, not like someone claiming something, but like someone asking permission. Her fingers threaded through mine. Still, I asked, are you sure? She smiled softly, like the question hurt in a good way. No, she said, but I want to be. We stood like that for a long time, hands linked, forehead to forehead, hearts doing all the talking we couldn't. Then she whispered, stay tonight, but not for the wrong reasons. I nodded. Not for escape, not for comfort, just because I'm here. And I see you. Her breath hitched. And that was it. That was the moment the rule shattered. Not with a kiss, but with honesty. We didn't rush it. No desperate pulling. No cinematic fade to black. Just two people learning to be close in a way that didn't feel stolen but earned. We curled into the couch, her legs over mine, my hand resting quietly on her knee. The night moved on around us, unnoticed. At some point, she whispered into my shoulder, promise me this doesn't disappear. And I whispered back, only if you promise not to push me away when it feels real. She didn't respond right away. Then, a small, fragile nod against my chest. That was enough. We didn't need more than that. Not yet. People think the line is crossed in one big moment. A kiss, a night together, a confession. But the truth? It happens in smaller ways. It happened the day I started noticing the way she held her coffee mug with both hands like it was something fragile. The day she remembered how I took my eggs. Not because I told her, but because she'd watched. It happened when I stopped thinking of her as my landlady and started thinking of her as Maya. It's been almost 6 months since the night we broke the rule. We didn't rush into anything, even after that night on the couch. For a while, it was just small things. Cooking together. Sitting on the front steps after dark. Talking about our lives, not the polished versions we give other people, but the ones with cracks and regrets and years that didn't go the way we planned. She told me about the year she lost everything. Her job, her partner, her health, and how she clawed her way back in silence because nobody was coming to save her. I told her about feeling invisible most of my life, like I was just floating around, waiting for something or someone to make it all feel real. And somehow, somewhere in the middle of all those quiet truths, we started showing up for each other without pretending. People still judge us, quietly, subtly. Her friends act polite but cautious when I'm around. My coworkers raise eyebrows when I say I'm seeing someone. But the thing is, I'm not with Maya because I want to prove anything. I'm with her because she sees me. And because when I see her, really see her, I don't see older or off-limits or complicated. I see the most alive person I've ever met. The room she once rented me is still mine technically, But I sleep in her bed now. We keep both doors open like nothing has to be hidden anymore. Some mornings, she still pretends like she's not waiting for me to stir first. But I see it in her smile, in the way she hums while making breakfast. The quiet joy of being wanted. Not because she needs fixing, not because I'm playing some fantasy, but because we choose each other. Every day. Even the hard ones. Especially the hard ones. We never came up with a new rule. But if we did, it might sound something like this. Be brave enough to care. Even when it's messy. Even when it's scary. Because real love isn't about playing it safe. It's about showing up anyway.